Batman and Harley Quinn, two of DC's most popular characters. The two have always bounced well off of each other comedically, so the idea of pairing them together in some kind of feature film isn't really a surprising one. However, what was surprising was the variety of ways that people reacted to it, as well as certain stylistic and narrative choices that took place within said project. Greetings shippers, welcome back, and it's time to take a look at a movie that based on the title you would think would be a Bat-Quinn extravaganza, but actually isn't. It's more of a HarleyWing extravaganza, and a little bit of Harley and Ivy thrown in there if you're looking. We've already talked about the history of HarleyWing in a previous video, so click the card or the link below if you're interested in hearing more about that. But now it's time to take the shipping goggles off, as it were, and we're gonna take a look at the good, the bad, and the sex scene that is Batman and Harley Quinn. Social media, I have it. If you're interested in seeing what's coming up next or just chatting, follow me on there. Also check out Patreon if you're interested in supporting the show and helping determine content. It really helps out a lot. But most importantly, if you're expecting this to be an either completely positive or completely negative review, then you're probably new to this channel, because that's not how we do things. We're going to take a look at both the pros and the cons. So if you're someone who absolutely loved or absolutely hated this movie and you're looking to be validated, this is not the review for you. But if you want to see both sides about what made this movie good and bad, admittedly leaning slightly towards the bad, then sit tight. Batman and Harley Quinn, released in 2017, revolves around Batman and Nightwing recruiting Harley Quinn to help them track down Poison Ivy, who is teamed up with the Floronic Man for a plan of plant-based world domination and potentially destruction. To start upbeat, let's take a look at what people like. Starting off with the DCAU look and feel. In recent years, at the time of this recording, there has been a wave of nostalgia for the DC animated universe, both in comic and film formats, with comics like Harley Loves Joker becoming huge successes, prompting more in that style. Overall, this film falls nicely into, with 5 prequel comics and a 7-part series to follow. This movie recaptured the animation style of these characters and features 2 prominent cast members in returning roles, Kevin Conroy as Batman and Lauren Lester as Nightwing, giving the whole affair the feel of an extended television episode, which is about accurate, as at just over an hour including both intro and outro credits, this is a very short romp, barely fleshed out enough to make a film's runtime. Not that short equals bad, but when it comes to a feature film, most people expect them to be a little longer and have a bit more substance. As while this film may be an hour, it doesn't feel like it, and not in a good way. More in the sense that not a lot has happened. There are animations that are capable of telling much more complex stories in less time. However, it could be argued that telling a complex story is not what Batman and Harley Quinn is going for. The film, for those who are aficionados of the series, may also feel a tad familiar, with the Harley helping Batman angle feeling very reminiscent of the animated series episode Harley Quinnade, wherein Batman and Robin, mostly Batman, team up with Harley to capture the Joker. It even has a club scene where she sings. As for taking over the world with plants, it's a standard Ivy plot, which leads us to one of the main complaints. Even if producer Bruce Timm claims spiritually this film belongs in the DCAU, there are many clear cues that it in fact doesn't, chief amongst them being the more comedic and immature tone. Recent DC endeavors have been attempting to re-inject the fun into their products, with varying degrees of success.
Fine.
Ugh, holy.
It's not so bad.
While not all fart jokes are bad, the vast majority are, especially when they take place in a work that emulates the DCAU, a world renowned for appealing to both children and adults in terms of maturity, which leads to the next area of confusion. At many times, the lower brow jokes are attempting to appeal to an older audience, creating moments of dissonance where it is unclear who the exact target demographic is. Is this film for new viewers? Is it for fans of the show? It's difficult at times to tell. And if it is meant for new fans, then it must be noted that there is much better DC fare that they can jump into, including the aforementioned show that this movie appears to be homaging. This, coupled with moments of surprising depth, can make the whole outing feel disjointed. Another side effect of the quest for edge is the casual swearing, such as Poison Ivy saying ass and which adds nothing either to her character or the plot, but is notable for its gratuitousness. Speaking of Ivy, many fans took issue with her presentation before they had even seen the film. The reason being, her team up with the Floronic Man. The Floronic Man, aka the Plant Master, is rarely seen these days, but he is notable for the role he plays in Ivy's post-crisis origin, as her abuser, who seduces her as her professor and uses her for experiments, ultimately driving her insane. This made some fans angry that a film would pair her with her abuser, though in the the film's defense, there are many different origins to choose from, and many stories to tell, and even that tale could be well executed. As it stands, that was not the origin most likely on display, as it is stated that Jason Woodrue is from an other dimension, his pre-Crisis and Neil Gaiman rebooted origin. It must also be noted that DC works tend to take place in what is known in the comic world as the Multiverse, meaning that certain works can be viewed as being from separate universes, and the company actually makes an effort to differentiate that. The DCEU, the DCAU, all of the various films, the comicverse, different universes. Although for some, they feel that certain narratives trump the multiverse and simply should not be told. For all those concerned, the idea behind the team-up seems to have been the plant theme, and the allure of a brief Swamp Thing cameo. Which leads up to the film's main defense from people who really like it, as well as the creators. It's not trying to be anything more than just a good time. It's not trying to be deep or lasting, but just be an amusing romp. However, people's mileage will vary on whether or not they found it to be so. Everyone finds different styles of humor appealing and has varying knowledge of comic lore, which leads to a variety of different reactions. For some, this was a fun nostalgia fest, a popcorn time filler of a movie featuring some beloved characters, and they weren't there to give it any deeper examination than that. For others, it wasn't even worthy of note. It happened, and that was that. And for still more, it was a time waster, full of mischaracterizations, such as how weak Ivy was, being manipulated by all around her. And finally, the moment that stood out the most for this film and also caused the most confusion, the aforementioned sex scene. This occurring between protagonists Nightwing and Harley Quinn. And make no mistake, it's a real sex scene. There's an erection joke, a pan to some underwear on the floor after.
Like Nightwing over here, Captain Kirk and me for info, and then see you later, toots?
Oh yes.
Did you get what you needed?
Well, yeah. Evie's whereabouts.
Only the classiest of sex jokes for Batman and Harley Quinn. Like the Batgirl Batman sex scene, which we've also discussed, it's a sequence that left many viewers asking, but why? Unlike the former scene, however, which was there to add something to the narrative, specifically pathos to Batgirl's character, as awry as that attempt went, most viewers could at least understand where it was coming from. For many viewers, this sequence serves absolutely no purpose. Writer Bruce Timm admits as much, stating, "It's not that it's an important scene. I actually think it's just kind of an awkward, funny situation to put the two of them into." While that may have been the intent, for some who watched, their reaction was less cavalier. Sex in a cartoon ostensibly geared towards children is bizarre enough, but to have it occur with no intent to further the narrative seems off, especially as within our narrative structure, sex and relationships are often there at least for character development, if nothing else. Indeed, the entire scene could be cut from the movie with nothing lost, except crucial runtime. And criticisms of the scene don't end there. It is also noteworthy for its meta-ness that has added a sense of unease for some, and also just a general unease because of how it plays out. But first, the meta-ness. One joke was the mention of Seduction of the Innocent, when Harley quips that she didn't think that Batman and Robin liked girls. Seduction of the Innocent was a book written in 1954 by psychiatrist Frederick Wortham, who was concerned about the negative effects comics were having on children's minds, similar to modern concerns about violence in video games. He was particularly troubled by what he viewed as homosexual overtones in Bruce and Dick's relationship, such as sharing a bed, despite the fact that Dick was clearly a child and they had a parent-child relationship. These concerns are said to have led to the creation of Batwoman. Be that as it may, in this case, the reference serves to highlight the age difference between the two, as Harley claims to have written a paper on it in college. The unease rises when she asks him if he was Robin. We discussed this in more detail in HarleyWing, so head on over there if you want to know more about that. But to summarize, the age gap, and the way it is not addressed the way it would be if the sexes were reversed, is not for everyone. So let's head on over to the next reference, this one unintentional, that being Nightwing's rape. For those not up on their 1990s Nightwing, during the Devin Grayson run on the book, Nightwing was raped by the villainous Tarantula in a plot that left a bad taste in the minds of many, as it was never properly addressed and wasn't even referred to as such until years later when the author apologized for giving so little weight to such a momentous occurrence, claiming it was part of a plot line she was never able to complete. And that's not even the first time that has happened to Nightwing. Poor Nightwing. For some, the positioning and handling of this scene is reminiscent of that, and is clearly a reminder of how callously his character was treated, a reminder that few need. However, even without prior comic knowledge, the scene plays out with an undertone, or even overtone, of non-con, or at the very least, dub-con. If there was ever a scene that would perfectly explain what dubious consent is and why people use it as a tag, it would be this scene. As well, the sequence throws in an erection joke to let the audience know that Nightwing has one. Other than that, and a very quickly whispered consent.
I'm not saying I don't want to, because that could be nice. All sorts of wrong, but nice. Right now, I just really need to find poison.
Shh. Face it, sugar. I got something you want, and you sure as shootin' got something I want. So, be a good boy and maybe Mama will give you a cookie.
There is very little in the way to make this scene comfortable or equal. Nightwing is tied up at her mercy after being defeated by her in a fight. He has been doused with Joker venom and is being made to sit there tied and listen to her rant about her life. She has still proven herself to be very much unstable and capable of overpowering him, and it very much appears to be a situation of being pressured into consent. Not to mention that she also questions his sexuality, let's just throw that in there. And all of the above is played for comedy, which while that may work for some, it definitely does not for others. Because so many of the implications in the scene are so heavy, it makes it difficult for many to dismiss this scene as lighthearted fare, and instead highlights the dissonance between how the scene played out with Nightwing tied and Harley Quinn in control versus how it would have played out were it Harley Quinn tied and Nightwing in control. And the answer is it would not have played at all. As a result, while it is a brief sequence, it is one that sticks out in the minds of viewers and for some overshadows the entire outing, or at least sours it greatly. Bottom line, the scene adds nothing and raised questions for many, though there are of course some for whom it proved to be the titillating tongue-in-cheek joke it was intended as. And this scene was not in the minds of many the only mishandling of sexuality within the film, which has also become noteworthy for its excessive cheesecake or fan service, with images such as the infamous double butt crack making the rounds online. Indeed, this film often pauses for gratuitous fan service that is meant to be either titillating or humorous, but is too unsubtle and casts the audience in the position of the voyeur too much to be comfortable or pass unnoticed. It is to the point where these moments are distracting, taking away from the film such as it is. It is possible to integrate these more sleazy moments well, however this movie does not manage it, and there are many who are simply tired of seeing this type of exploitation be normalized. So verdict? It's okay, not great, and not terribly enjoyable. It may hit its alleged demographic according to its rating, but even many of them may be too mature for it. If you don't give it undue weight, it is possible to potentially just look at it as a quick, cheap romp. However, it does have a tendency to be annoying or angering if you ponder it or try to place it in a larger universe. And what did I think about it? It was okay, very forgettable except for that one scene. There's a reason that is the scene that is appearing all over the net. It's always cool to hear Conroy as Batman, and Lauren Lester as Robin and Nightwing was always a favorite for me, so that was a real treat to hear him voice that character again. In fact, the voice acting in general is pretty solid. It's definitely a point in this film's favor. Although again, if you're looking for great voice acting, there are many other DC endeavors for you to enjoy. The plot was cookie cutter, but would have been passable without all of the varying tonal shifts and bizarre narrative choices in places. However, with all of that said, it's a great outing for Harley Quinn. Aside from the fun nostalgia of seeing her original and in my case favorite costume, all of her quirks were on display in the best ways, minus the sex scene, which isn't bad for displaying sexuality, which is part of what Bruce Timm also addressed in the rest of his quote. The audience is well aware that Harley has always had a flirtatious and sexual side. The issue isn't with that, but rather in how it is presented, as many feel her sexuality and hotness have come to overshadow her character in many depictions of late. So the issues aren't with Harley's characterization, but rather with how they manifest within the narrative. It's also nice to see a DCAU-ified version of her moving on from the Joker that involves less lip-biting and ultra-violence. I could have done without the overall gratuitous cheesecake that just kept happening and the pans to boobs and butts, but that seems to just have been happening a lot and I'm not sure why. Who is asking for this? I know it's not me. Please stop. No, seriously, please stop. It makes me feel like a lech. Is this what you think of me? All I want is thonged booties and breast shots and webcams? I want more than that. But what did you think of this movie? Did you like it? Why or why not? Are people taking it way too seriously, or is it just a bit of a forgettable misstep? As always, share all of your thoughts down below. This has been Shipper's Guide to the Galaxy. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Special thanks to all my patrons, names on the side, and as always, stay tuned, for there are as many ships out there as there are stars in the sky.